if there ever was a rule of thumb to use, I would say with an Infiniti Q70L V8 on the highway, keeping up with regular speed limits, reasonable speed limits, you should expect to get about 400 miles to your tank. So this is the second leg of my trip, and in this case, I said I was going to be driving a little gently. Speed limit is 65. My cruise control is set at 65, and I'm just taking my time. This one is going to be a combined highway plus city. I'll be reporting it as honestly as possible. It's not going to be me trying to make the most of highway fuel economy. I'm not trying to see the most. I'm trying to report honest, typical use, but this is going to be a lot more highway mileage based. When I was in the city for that time, there was a little bit of, actually a lot of idling, but which is usually not very good fuel economy. But if you think about it, as I said, it's a game of numbers, and the averages, it's a game of numbers, game of averages, because I'm covering almost 300 miles on the highway versus 20 miles of city driving. No matter how horrible that was, the significance of the city fuel economy ends up being diminished. So at 73 miles covered right now, it says I've got to go. When you add up those two numbers, we're looking at a little more than 400 miles. Still far from that 500 I was thinking and wishing about, but I know it is possible. I know it is. One thing I want you to look at is the average fuel economy. It says 19.7 right now. Much earlier, I unfortunately I was not in a position to record it. It was actually showing something close to 16 because I had just been idling a lot when I was in the city. So it's different is what I'd say. But I intend to keep driving. Once I get to my destination tonight, I have maybe, if I play this right, I will be getting to my final destination right at, it's gonna be right at 400, yeah, maybe close to 400 miles. I need to look at it. So that will be an interesting challenge, saying you promised me a certain amount of miles, in that I assumed I was not going to need to stop for gas, but we'll see what that happens, how that ends up breaking down. Okay, this time I'm not going to pull up my phone that much. As I said, I'm trying to keep it as honest as possible and just drive and live life. I'm not trying to squeeze every ounce of fuel and maximize it. I'm just driving and obeying all the laws, keeping to the speed limits. Another update, speed limit is 60 miles an hour, and what do you know, 60 miles an hour over here. I just passed Troy, Missouri, and heading to Moscow Mills. Been riding the right lane quite a lot. This was an entry ramp back there, so I had to move over to let people come in, and as you can see, they're getting away from me, and I'm definitely not trying to chase. So that's all this is, a short update to let you know that I'm still being a good boy and keeping up with the speed limits. It's a new day. We're still working on the quest of real-time fuel economy. 132 miles covered since last night. Let's go to the info screen and see what it tells us. Fuel economy, 32.3 at the time. And distance to empty, 334. Phone stopped recording again. 329, it's actually going up. I like it. So 329 plus 132, we are at 460. I'm liking this. So we'll keep driving and stay within speed limits, and we'll see what we end up getting at the end of on the other side of this. And I'm leaving the house. I'm going to a restaurant to grab some food, and 148 miles covered so far. Info, fuel economy, 22.3. I'm sure over the next few 2 or 3 stops that I pull out the camera, this number might not change. Oh, well, looks like it just changed already from 22.3, right? So it's going to change a little bit, but the number that I know will probably drop down significantly is going to be this one here. Right now it says if you keep driving the way you've been driving, you still have 288 miles to go, and 288, add that to it, we're looking at what, 436, give or take, right? Am I looking at it right? Yeah, so 430 or so. Over the next few trips, this might drop down. Although I'll not cover that much in the way of mileage, I'll be doing a lot of stop and go traffic, city traffic, so that might drop down significantly. Well, let's see what happens. Let's keep driving. I've got one more stop, but right now, as you can see, the mileage on my trip B has not really increased that significantly. Info 21.8, that's dropped. I knew it was going to drop, just not that drastically in such a short time. And I was gonna say 273, so it jumped down to 268, just sitting still. So that's what idling and stop and go traffic does. That's what city driving does for your fuel economy and your estimated miles to empty. 268, it's not terrible, but we're looking at 417, give or take. So we'll make one more stop. The numbers are not going to be all that pleasing, but with time, once I get back on the highway, I'm going to get that number going up again till it starts going down, because we're running out of range on the gauge, and this should be going up. All right, hang with me. I'm at the Home Depot, and right before turning off my vehicle, what we have is 152 here, but suppose what should be more interesting is the 261, 216. Easy to remember, right? Let's turn it off and we'll go shop, then come back in. I just got on the highway maybe 1 mile ago, and I wanted to record this because now I'll be doing mainly highway driving. My trip home, I think I've got about 220 miles to my destination. This one tells me I've got 248 miles, so just let me work on this. Let me get that exact number. But I was going to say that if I play my cards right, if the distance to my destination is 210 miles, that means by the time I'm stopping there, I should be seeing 38 miles to go, ideally. Right now, my total is 248 plus 156. Add that up, that's 250 plus 2. Okay, so that's 407. We'll go with that. 407 is not too bad to a tank. The number here is 21.6. We are interested in this to see if it goes up. It will go up, by the way. It's just about when exactly will that be happening. So for now, it's going to be boring unless I see something exciting, like seeing that number jump to 23. I don't think there's really much worth sharing at this point, but we'll just keep driving. St. Louis, it's been fun. I tell you what, driving the speed limit is always interesting. Everybody is passing me, but we're doing this for a bigger cause, so I'm going to stick to it. I've got my cruise control set, and I have my distance preference set as well. I'm not going to be interfering with anybody. I am going pretty slowly. And correction, I had said I was working with 210 miles to go. The actual number is closer to 180 miles over there. So by the time I stop, I should be seeing something as close to 75 miles, 75 miles as the distance to empty. Right now, adding that up, 255 plus 160, we are looking at 415 to a tank, which is impressive. That's just in like 3 miles of driving. It hasn't been that much. Ooh, Hayabusa, I miss those days. So we'll see. Again, the magical thing is just adding that number there, plus this number here, and seeing what comes out. Drive safe. Finally, 65 miles an hour. So you know what we're gonna do here? Bump it up. 65. about to join Highway 70 east towards Indianapolis and beyond. I said everybody is passing me today. I see it. The speed limit is 70 miles an hour. So I have to oblige. I suppose if I were interested, I could run it as low as 60, even 50. It says that the minimum is 45, but that's just painfully slow. Not only that, with the change in altitude, the going uphill, going downhill, when I was driving at 60 miles an hour, the 7-speed transmission was not liking it. It kept shifting a lot, which I'm not saying it couldn't do it. It just shifted a lot to try and stay at the optimal RPM or power range, really. So I think 70 is okay. 65 might be a little better, decent compromise. It wouldn't feel the need to downshift 2 gears every time I'm going up a hill, but we should be fine here. I'm in standard mode. 2,000 RPMs for 70 miles an hour. That's pretty good for a Nissan V8, because if you ever owned an Infiniti M45, FX45, pretty aggressive. I think the RPMs would have been at 3,000 right about now, but yeah, we're making this work. Finally, I'm going to pass somebody who's not pulling off to get off the highway. I don't know how fast they're going, but definitely lower than 70, because, and it's not like it's a struggle. Like when you pass a truck, you know how long it takes. No, they're taking their time. And I'm not mad at them at all. Take your sweet time, be safe, arrive alive, stress-free, and all that. As I said, everybody is passing. They passed. I can see a truck, big rig coming up. They're gonna pass too. You know, let's look at. It's a pretty good time to be looking at it, I suppose. It says 224 miles to go, about 215 covered so far, and my fuel gauge is about halfway. So it's saying, you know, just kind of working with this number here, it's saying that I've covered 215, expect to cover 222, and I'm about halfway. That's perfect. With that estimate, it's saying that ideally, if I kept driving like this, like I'm doing right now, I'd have 222 left to half a tank, which means a full tank would have yielded around 440, approximately. But adding what I have here, it's what, 437. That's not too bad. That's not far off at all. So 437 to the tank is what I see at this point. 22.8. That number, has it changed? I can't remember. I'd have to go back to the other video clips to see. For fun, for the sake of it, with a gauge cluster mileage at 222, what do we have here? 217. So they just switched around. Have I passed? No, not even at the halfway mark yet. Something happened, maybe in the last 10 miles or so. I've noticed that although I'm going pretty slow at 70 miles, well, 70 is not really slow, I'm facing quite a lot of resistance, and I can feel the car getting buffeted a little bit. There seems to be, the trees look calm, but there's, I don't know, maybe it would be a normal breeze on a normal day, but right now it feels a lot like quite some wind. No, that tree's not all the way calm, see? Yeah. So maybe that's what's happening. Because of the resistance I'm getting from the wind and how much fuel I'm having to burn up as I drive at 70 miles an hour, maybe that's what is leading to that 215 over there. It's a lot lower than I expected. This mileage over here hasn't changed. 22.8 still, so that has not really changed significantly. Remember, it's a game of numbers. Here's another update. I've covered 250 miles, well, 251 at this point, and it felt like 250 was going to be pretty nice to deal with. Looking at my fuel gauge, I just now made it to the halfway mark. And in an ideal world, 250, halfway on the gauge, that means for full tank, I should be getting right around 500 miles. But when you look at that, it says 187. I was hoping for 250 on that side as well. So if this tells me anything, is that even 70 miles an hour is a little fast. With regards to fuel economy, again, that's 60 to 65 range, maybe 65. I think next time I get an opportunity, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try and just hold maybe a long trip, right? 23, sorry, I don't know where the 23 came. I know where it came from. It came from there, 23 miles per gallon. I'm going to try and do a long trip and just hold at 65 miles an hour for as long as I can, and then come back and we'll see what happens. Hopefully we'll use that and say, okay, now here's our optimal fuel economy for a vehicle like this, right? Because you want to be at highway speed so that you can use all 7 gears without lugging the engine, but you don't want to be too fast either. But 70 miles an hour holds the RPMs at 2,000. It could be lower because if I did 65, for example, just as an example here. It's going to flash and stuff. Make sure it gets caught up. See, can be lower. So that to me tells me that we can do better. But at least 70 is an interesting number, good enough that it gets you wherever you need to with a decent sense of urgency without being too crazy. But I'll take 2,000 RPM, and you can actually calculate this. You could go back to the bench and calculate for a vehicle like this, engine size, is it direct injected or port injected, the tire size, rear differential size. You can put in all the transmission gears. You could get as nerdy as you want to with this, and that's how the people that design these vehicles calculate these things. Then we try to make the best of their calculations in the real world. But here's my update: 180, 23, 250. That puts it at 434, 400 to a full tank. Could be better. I know that for sure. Could be better. At least one thing I know for sure is that I'll make it home with this tank of gas. So I'm not too worried about that part. I mentioned earlier that everybody was passing me, right? And if you look at this clip right here, you might notice that I'm now passing a few more people. I'm not going very fast. I'm still doing 70 miles an hour, which is a speed limit. So what happened? I'll tell you what changed the balance of power. I was passed by a police officer, and suddenly everybody found their brakes. These vehicles had passed me. I remember seeing this one. I remember, no, I don't think that truck right there had passed me, but the big rig behind me passed me. The one in front over there looks like one that passed me as well. It's just that the presence of that cop car, I suppose, slowed people down. Home sweet home, Terre Haute, Indiana. I've been doing the speed limit all along, and now I'm going to head straight to Sam's Club, fill it up with gas. Looking at the numbers, I've done 340. Estimates I've got 106 left. So to the tank, I'd be getting something like 446. Not bad at all. Not bad. But I'm going to get my numbers. First guess is that this 23.9, it was 0.7 is going to be a little lower. I'm going to get a number just slightly higher than that. Infiniti Q70L, I just filled up and I wanted to report or share my fuel economy, my gas mileage when driving fairly conservatively, a little bit of city driving, maybe 10%, and the rest of it being highway driving. And as I said, highway just keeping up with the max speed limits and no more than that. Right now, this 468 distance to empty says that if you keep driving the way you have been driving up to this point, you should get 468 miles to a full tank. I'll take that. Right now, I have covered 340.8 miles in my mix of driving, and it says I've got 23.7 miles per gallon average, but I'm going to calculate it. So let's do 340.8 divided by the amount of gas it took to fill up, which was 13.694. 24.88. That's not bad at all. Not bad. Usually when you do these calculations, your numbers are usually lower than what the computer says. Right now, I just recently reset this. Let me look at the history. Yeah, 3 runs or so. And did I reset it right? Yeah, I can't remember, but the most current one, it just says you're at about 23, which makes sense. I know as I do more city driving with the vehicle, this number is going to go down significantly, but I think either 23.7 or 24.88 as manually calculated is a pretty good number for 5.6 liter V8 with as much power as this, with as much luxury refinement as this vehicle does, and I'm happy about that. At this point, really, I'm going to cancel my trip B. I usually always track my fuel economy, not as a way of being cheap, I guess. Not really. I mean, I use premium fuel all the time. I do it just as a performance metric to know how my vehicle is behaving. Right now, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to say, you know, whatever numbers come out of this will be our numbers, and we're going to use those. If I get to that point where I'll be doing the longer trips for the sole purpose of checking fuel economy, then I can reset it at that point. But for now, this is going to be our new working average. Okay. All right. All the best. Catch you guys later.